Transplanting your plants is a very important step in a plant's life. My name is Tony and I'm going to tell you everything you need to do and what to avoid when transplanting your plant from pot to pot. I want to make this the most entertaining and educational YouTube channel in the world, but right now we're basically at 0. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a comment of what gardening content you want to see next. There'll be a timestamp on the timeline for you to jump to if you want to just go through everything in more depth. One of the first things to consider is when to transplant your plant, and that can be determined by if the plant is just not growing anymore. You might need to give it a bigger pot for it to spread its roots. That makes sense, right? Bigger pot, bigger plant. Also, how quick is your soil drying? After you water your plant, if it's drying up really fast, then that probably means that the roots are sucking up that water real quick. So they need more room to grow. But when you're moving your plant from one pot to another, then it's more than likely going to go through plant shock. Very shocking, I know. By the end of this video, you should know the do's and don'ts about transplanting your plant. This little guy's roots are pushing against the edges of the pot, so it's time for it to get into a bigger pot. In a lot of cases, you want to test your soil, but in this case, I got this organic soil, so I don't need to test it. But if you want a video on how to test your soil, then leave it in the comments down below and I will get to it for you. Before we go transplanting plants, we gotta fill this pot up. In this case, this pot has a line that's about a ½ inch from the top of the pot, and that's where you want to fill your soil up to. And while you're putting the soil in the pot, you want to make sure that the soil is nice and loose because you want the roots to have the least amount of resistance. As you're getting closer to the top, try to make a little bit of an area for your new plant to go in. So that way you don't fill up the whole pot and then you're left with like no room to put the new plant in. After you fill it up to about that line, you're going to want to make a little hole to where your new plant is going to go into. You know what? I think I did too much soil. Don't be afraid to take some soil, put it back. This is too much soil. Now that we have our hole for our new plant, we need to get the plant. Oh, wait a second. I gotta take it out of the pot first. Here's something that you're gonna wanna do to help you avoid plant shock. Slowly caress this little guy and make sure that try to get it all out in one ball root. You don't want to have the soil too wet. You don't want to have it too dry, because if it's too dry, then all of the dirt is going to fall off the roots and it's going to make it so that your roots are exposed. Because if you put it in there and all the roots are kind of hanging out, then your plant is going to be more shocked. That's not what we want. We want this to go as smooth as possible. You know what? My soil's a little moist, maybe a little too moist. So you kind of get it out in as much of a clump as possible. And then right here, you have your plant. You want to try to keep all of these roots in there as much as possible. You don't want to have them hanging out like this because that'll add to having more plant shock. And the fact that this is nice and moist is going to help keep these roots in place while I transplant it into my pot. Kind of want to gently place your plant into here with as much care as possible. So that way you try not to disturb the plant too much, and then you bury him back in here. And it looks like there wasn't enough soil, because it's still kind of sticking out a little bit, so you want to fill this in so that way you have a nice even lay of soil for the plant to start rooting itself into. Try to put it as much in the center of the pot as you can. Essentially, that's everything that you need to know about transplanting your plant from one pot to another, but let's do a quick recap and touch on things that I might have missed and go into more depth about it. Your plant's original pot is too small and your roots aren't growing anymore, so make sure that you get a pot that is bigger than your original pot and has drainage holes. Another tip that you can do is put coffee filters on your drainage holes. You do this because if the soil's getting drained, it could clog your drainage hole and then make it so that your plant doesn't drain adequately. Adding plant supplements to your plant's new home is a really efficient way to avoid plant shock and help your plant grow way faster. I'm going to conveniently leave a link in our description to our website where you can find everything that you need to make your plant happy in its new home. Just like these guys, look at them. Look, you see that? Little smiley faces coming out of them. That's a happy plant. This is the plant 4 days after repotting it. In my case, I used our starter kit. Using any kind of gloves is definitely a good idea when you're transplanting your plant. Otherwise, you're gonna be playing with the soil bunch with your hands and you're gonna get dirt in your nails and it's really annoying to get out. So that's just another thing to look out for. If you do pick a terracotta pot to repot your plant, then make sure that you saturate that pot in water before repotting because that pot absorbs water and you want the water and the nutrients to go to your plant and not your pot. We're trying to grow the plant. We're not trying to grow pots. Put a base of soil before putting your ball root into your pot. You want your roots to grow out and down and not just out. Before repotting, water your plant thoroughly so that way your ball root stays intact. If the plant is dry, then your soil will crinkle and fall off and your roots will be exposed, and that will cause more plant shock. And that's not what we want, because we want our plants to grow immediately in the new pot. You do not want to pull the plant out of its pot, because you could just pull the entire plant out, and that's not good. The easiest way that I found to do it is just to flip it upside down and give it a little jiggle until the ball root falls into your hand. Place your little guy centered in its new home and add a little bit of extra soil around that ball root and pack it in nice and lightly with your hands. To make sure that you avoid your plant getting shocked, thoroughly water it after repotting. In my case, I used our starter kit and the plant already looks a lot greener. It's wild. I'm like amazed by it. I was like, it's bright. It's bright now. The only thing left for me to do is name this plant. So leave a comment down below of what you think I should name it. I'm thinking Jeff, but either way, if you follow all of these steps, then you're gonna have yourself a happy little plant. All you gotta do is give it some loving care and some nutrients. So make sure you subscribe so you can see how much it grows by next week. And I love you, and I will see you later.